Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It is time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and people who put stuff out just so you can get some background as to what they're thinking about when they write the stuff that they write and give you a chance to find out what a little more about what's going on in the Bronx. In our second segment, we're going to talk to a local opera group, which is going to be interesting. But nonetheless, this will be interesting too. Let's say hello to the bureau chief for Chalkbeat, New York. It is Amy Zimmer. Nice to see you, Amy.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
You wrote a piece, and I was just saying to you earlier that I thought it was fascinating. And I'm going to read the headline: Participation in parent conferences has plunged 40%. And then the question, is Zoom to blame? I thought that was interesting. We want to credit your colleague, Alex Zimmerman. I assume no relation to Amy Zimmer, yeah, who was unable to join us this evening. But tell us a little bit about what the deal is, because parent-teacher conferences, I recall, I mentioned to you both my parents were teachers. This was a very important way of working with families. Let's put it that way. So where are we at? What happened?
Right. So parent teacher conferences are really important. They're an important way for parents to know how their kids are doing, to feel more connected to their children's school. And what happened is parent teacher conferences now are remote. That was part of the recent teachers union contract that teachers do remote parent teacher conferences now unless a parent requests for an in-person conference. But I don't think a lot of parents know that. So for the most part, these conferences are now on Zoom or Google Meet
Wow,
online. And for some parents, they love this, right? It's great.
sure.
They can do this from work during the day. Parent teacher conferences are during the day, some are in the evening.
I think I remember when I was a kid, they were always in the evening, right?
Yeah, well, schools now they have a half a day, and so there's a block during the day, and then they continue during the evening.
Wow.
And so, parents can call during their lunch breaks. We've talked to teachers who said parents will Zoom in from their cars, right? They
Wow.
have childcare.
And this until I read your article, I was somewhat blown away by it, because not only you said it's good for the families to find out what's going on, but it's also good for the teachers. If there's a problem they've been unable to reach a child with, then they can ask, talk to the parents about it. Plus, it helps the teachers sometimes understand who the parents are. So if there is 40% less participation, putting the format aside, that's a problem. But then it doesn't let you, here I am doing a virtual TV show, but certainly in terms of counseling a family or working with a family or learning about a child, that face to face is a very important thing. I would think.
Right. Right. And so
And excuse me 1 second. The whole notion that it's in the teacher's contract, I understand that it requires extra work. They have to be there at night or whatever it is. And so they can also do it from the comfort of their home. I don't know that it's helping our kids do better in school. That's me.
I think it's open to debate because there's
Yes.
some parents who love it. It's more convenient. Those
Yes.
probably tend to be parents who are online, right? Who do Zooms,
Oh, that's another thing.
who
Is
have access
available
to computers
technology.
and
Oh my
who can
goodness.
do that sort of thing. But then, there's a real digital divide in this city. We saw that during COVID. We saw that when schools went remote, there were a lot of families who didn't have access to technology. They didn't have Wi-Fi. There are families who might have cell phones, but they might not have computers at home. And um, we have heard from schools who've said that there's been a big drop off, right? Because it might not be accessible, especially for families where English is not the first language. That's just like this added barrier.
Wow. And let's just interject that for a second. So imagine a family speaks Spanish or any foreign language, and of course we have New York City and certainly in the Bronx, we're a place of immigrants. Imagine if you don't, and then you want to do it, and then you click Zoom, and the communication is even more difficult.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Hmm.
And I've heard from teachers who said that parents won't even, click on the email what they get saying, here, sign up for a parent teacher conference. They won't even try. It can be really hard to navigate all the different links. If
Wow.
your kid goes to middle or high school, you have different teachers, there are different signups, these different, some might do Zoom, some might do
Yeah.
Google Meet.
Wow.
It can be really, really confusing if you're not very tech savvy to do it. And some families aren't. And then also, for families who live in shelters, right? You might have
Oh, my
right?
goodness. Thank you for bringing up. And it's one thing to say, well, living in shelters, but we're talking about 10% of the student population in New
Exactly.
York City.
Exactly. So
Oh my
um,
goodness.
it can be
Yeah. Wow.
right. It can be hard. It can be hard. So we looked at some data right from the city, and the numbers are down 40% from pre-pandemic,
Wow.
according to the data that the city has, and that is collected from parent coordinators.
I remember, I'll give you two anecdotes in real life. I mean, for my child, he was in school and there was something he was not doing, and we didn't know about it. But he was with us, with the teacher at the time, and we straightened it out. He's an adult now and doing very, very well and is successful in his world, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But we were able to address a question very directly, and go back and forth. And I also remember another instance where the teacher was not doing the right thing, and we were able to talk with them about it, and deal with it. I think if we had Zoom at that time, it might have been a little more difficult to really communicate on either.
Right.
Um,
And we've heard a few things, right?
wow.
So when you're in the classroom, you're there, you see the work. You see the work.
Yes, you see what's. Yep.
The teacher can show you your kids' work. You can see other work hanging on the wall,
Yep.
maybe, so you know what's going on. So there's that aspect that you
You
don't
are
get.
right. What I'm interested in is the question of whether teachers are also frustrated about it, because we've talked about how the interaction works both ways, and it's helpful for both parents and teachers. Do you think the teachers will go back to their union and say, maybe we ought to alter this? Or am I just dreaming in my own little world here?
That seems unlikely. I mean, obviously,
Really?
there were teachers who pushed for this, and that's why it was in the
Yeah.
contract. However, I will say that there are some teachers who I think are also frustrated. I talked to one who felt that the conversations that he has with parents felt a little more superficial on
Yes.
Zoom.
You also brought up something that I thought was fascinating, and I have an example from one of my children's visits. There were things on on the walls. The teacher was wanted to teach about slavery, but he had it up there so, like, while you were learning math, you'd see the words slavery and slaves, and it just was not appropriate. Not that, of course, we should be teaching about all that stuff in our history and about fairness and equality and everything else. But the way it was presented was like that's what children need to be looking at all day long. And of course, we got to change. So I think there's a lot there. I want a funny anecdote. I'll tell you a funny, which I've never said this publicly. 10th grade, my parents went in to see my chemistry teacher, and she said, "Oh, you're Gary Axelbank's parents. He's delightful. He sits in the front and he's always bright and he always has something to say. Of course, he's no student, but he's a wonderful boy." So there we are. And now I became a talk show host. What can I tell you? She was foreshadowing my future. So this is really part of, I guess, the communication. I call it a communications epidemic, that we're not communicating as well. And if we could be a little more touchy feely and get next to each other, I do think it's fascinating, and I appreciate you for bringing it up. I want to bring up another kind of nice story that you wrote about, everything is not all terrible in our schools. How, and the title was How Running Track Led This Bronx Middle School Teacher and Coach Full Circle. Running track changed the course of Elias Cruz's life. Tell us a little bit about Elias Cruz and what this was about.
Yeah, so he is a middle school teacher in the Bronx, and he
Let's see,
did
that's
his
PSMS 15. Do I have that right? Yeah.
that is where he went to school.
Right.
And now he is teaching at a different school, but in the same neighborhood where he grew up.
Hmm.
Which is kind of cool, right? Like,
Yeah, of course.
so he's now at a school called the New School for Leadership in the Arts in the Bronx.
Mhm.
So
And how did track change his life, and how did running track make him better off and make, of course, the students he works with better off?
yeah, so he ran track. He started when he was in middle school. He had an English teacher, a middle school English teacher, who is still his mentor, which is kind of amazing.
That
And
is kind of amazing.
yeah, and so he started running. He did it with his friends just because like they wanted to see who could be fastest, and it started really building him as a leader. And then when he got to high school, he would help the younger kids, and he recognized, like, he would write down all of his exercise routines, and then he would share them, and he would help other kids improve. And he realized that he was he's, as he said, he was building this culture of teaching within himself. And
Listen, this we only have a few seconds left, but this is the bottom line for education. If you learn something, and it works for you, you internalize it, and then you go out and embody that in the long run. I mean, I think, to me, and the reason I brought it up is it can work. And
right.
especially to me, what really works is these extracurricular programs. He didn't get that through sitting in math. Not that he may be a bad or good math student, but he got it through the extracurricular activities. Amy Zimmer, this has been a pleasure. You're the bureau chief at Chalkbeat, New York. Your work is so important to us. And I'm going to guarantee you we're going to invite you back.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Great. Thank you. We're going to take a short break. And then, as I said, we're going to go and do opera in a Bronx neighborhood. Don't go away.